Deutsches Kunst. I am Lawrence Moorman, retired professor of humanities and relative of George Washington. That's who I am. I was born in San Francisco, 3 brothers, a loving mom and dad, and went to grammar school, Catholic grammar school for 8 years, and had a good time. I was an altar boy. Then I went to a Catholic seminary to study to be a priest for 8 years. And when I had my fill of that, I went to San Francisco State University, where I got a master's degree in humanities. And I did my student teaching at Marin College. And then I got a full-time job at Yuba College and worked there for 33 years. 2 sabbaticals, published 2 books. Sang in a chorus for 8 years. Became a painter. Exhibited art, photographs, all over the state of California, especially at San Francisco State. And I was advisor to the Gay Student Union for about 10 years, right when everybody was dying of AIDS. And I was married for 7 years, and then I figured I was a faggot and lived happily ever after. Retired in 1999 and moved to Santa Cruz, which is a wonderful, wonderful town. People say, "How do you like it?" I said, "I died and went to heaven." Hi from heaven. Oh, that's funny. I was never a gay husband in the closet because I was married and I was happily married. Now, I suppose I would be bisexual, but I didn't even know I was gay. So how could I be in the closet? And what happened was after I divorced, life was so miserable with women, I said I might as well try something else. That's how I became gay. It had nothing to do with my marriage. In fact, we're still good friends. She's almost blind, very competent. She was a nurse and an educated person. And has always remained a good friend, one of my best friends. And then, what happened as soon as I decided I was gay, wanted to be gay, I took on the Baptist church on the front cover of the newspaper. That's how I came out. advisor to the Gay Student Union. My big memory of that was in 19. Well, there were several, of course, people who I knew and died, and those are very important memories. But in 1990, we went to a march. It was pouring raining in January. The Gay Student Union. You see, we didn't have all this bisexual stuff at that time. It was just Gay Student Union. And we went to Sacramento and was marching in a march, and all these Christians came up and were hassling us. And I said to this guy, why are you hassling us? It seems to me the Gospels say you should feed the hungry and clothe the naked. Why aren't you doing that instead of hassling these people? And he said, you know what? You're right. So that was a high point of my career in the Gay Student Union. And on the front page of the newspaper, people tried to stop the college from supporting the march of the Gay Student Union. They would carry a banner saying, "This is Yuba College." And the president of the college, to his credit, said, "No, there's free speech in America. These people have the right to do whatever they want with their free speech." And so on the front page of the papers, he supported the Gay Student Union marching in the Sacramento March. And that's kind of the high point of that. But beyond that, when I retired, one of the gay students had become a college teacher. And he came to my reunion, and I said, well, when we give A's, we say the students earned it. And we F's, we say we fail. I wonder if we ever accomplish anything. And he wrote in the memory book, he said, this is one life you saved. Because he was in the Gay Student Union. So we never know the effect we have on people. Well, I did in that one, but nothing. I mean, what caused me was the horrible treatment I had from women. I said, this is so horrible. I had the worst dates. I don't even want to go there. At work, I couldn't tell. I mean, my friends, there was no difference. My brother was supportive. He was coroner of San Mateo County. He was very supportive. But the rest of my family said I was a child molester. There were 2 or 3 other brothers. And I didn't know it till years later that they said, don't go around him. He's a child molester. That was my reward. Well, they didn't. They avoided me for 30 years. Since I've retired, I spent $100,000 on these bozos, and all they want is more money. Of course, they're alcoholics too, so I'm trying to write that off. The brother who would support me died. He died of throat cancer at 63. I took care of him last year. He died last year of his life. It was a nightmare. Those poor young men that died should not have happened. But then that couldn't have been avoided because we didn't know. We had no idea. It was all luck. And it seems like half the men who I knew as students in college died of AIDS. So that's what that was like. And it wasn't until the mid-90s that you had some kind of cure that you could live with it. So for me, that was 10 years of just total devastation. That's what it was like. Everybody around you was dying or sick or something. I was lucky. I never had sex without a condom. I guess that was one thing. But I guess I was lucky. But so many were not. I guess in general, what I learned over the years was if you used a condom, you were safe. And oral sex was generally safe. But sex without a condom, anal sex without a condom was deadly, and it was. Everybody I knew who had anal sex without a condom died. Pretty clear. I mean, we didn't know it in the beginning, but as time went on, it became clear that that was the case. And boy, there were no exceptions. Well, Kramer's recent play shows it all. The presidential, who was that asshole president that they all like, the Republican, denied that there was he wouldn't give any money to it, and there were riots, and the history is right. The gays got out and rioted, and because they rioted, they got the money they needed for health, and they stood up for themselves, and that's. And then of course everybody else did too. Like a lot of public people came out to support AIDS research, and but what a difference! Rock Hudson, he came out with AIDS on TV. That's how bad it was in those days. That was probably between 85 and 89, and then you had so many people who were supportive. Once they found a cure, everybody was rational about it. But up until that time, it was all our fault. And we shouldn't have sex, da, da, da. And the gays themselves were punishing each other over this. The best movie ever made about this is A Longtime Companion. I think that's a really good movie. Kramer has to be credited for being the voice of the revolution against silence. On the other hand, he was a total, it's all about me. He was a total, as so many gays are, what would you call them? Egocentric. And but it was effective. And you see the movie, I think the movie's quite accurate because he wrote the script. But we got our voice, and it's a good example of a story how you're not going to get anything until you get out there. Workers are not going to have a living wage until they get out there and strike for the entire country. You got to get balls, and you have to say the gay men did it during they had a tough time among themselves, but they did it. They got organized, they got out there, and they changed everything. They got the research done. And today you can live with AIDS, and it's not nearly the horror that it was, but it was as bad as you could possibly imagine it when we didn't know what was causing it. And that went on for years. And then even when we did know what was causing it, there was no cure for another 5 or 10 years. So you're talking from 80 to 95, 15 years of horror. And the first 10 were denial and just ignorance. And the second 10 was looking for a cure, and which we basically got. Yeah, the advice I would give is, I mean, because I've read stuff for all this time, all through the crisis. And the one thing I've learned is if you have oral sex, it's fine. You may get gonorrhea or something, but you're not going to get AIDS. Everybody's agreed on that. But always have sex with a condom. Never have sex without a condom. I have to tell you one story about that. I mean, that generally is not known. Is that if you have sex without a condom, you can get E. coli, and I did. I know because I did, and that's deadly. And you don't think of that very often, but what it is shit going up through your tract. And I got it, and I didn't know I had it. And antibiotics cured it, but you could die of it. I had a good immune system. So that's another reason for sex, with a condom because all kinds of diseases happen that way. No, I just got terribly sick. I started to faint and stuff. I didn't know why. I had to go to emergency, and they just took a blood sample and they said you have E. coli. It's easily cured, but it was not easily detected because I had no reason to think that I had that, and I got it from anal sex without a condom. I mean, what else could it be? No, I'm sure that was no. I mean, let's see how they figured that because it had something to do with my penis and the test that it was definitely. You mean you don't think of E. coli as a venereal disease, but it well it isn't, but you can get it that way. I don't know. I think gay men. You just can't make any generalizations. Some of them are. I mean, there are guys in America who want to go out and get AIDS. They want it. And then there are people that just don't have sex at all. They're totally paranoid and think that you get sex from oral sex. I mean, you're going to die if you have oral sex. They just don't know. And everything in between. So it's, how much do you read? Of course, I've been reading over 30 years. So I have a clue. I read gay stuff, gay magazines, and health magazines. If you don't do that, then you just go like everybody else does in ignorance and do whatever you want to do. Uh, I find uh, um, what works is no sex without a condom if you're doing anal sex. So generally, I don't do it. But I haven't had any problems for years and years and years. The actual, you look at the data, and there's some increase in America. That horrible disease has, again, it's curable, but gonorrhea and gonorrhea has always been common. But syphilis is on the increase. And then there's always other kinds of disease that are less troubling, but are nonetheless still sexual, like chlamydia, which can make women sterile, men too, I guess. So we're not too worried about that, are we? But there was I don't know how I contacted that guy. That's kind of interesting. He contacted me. I must have been on some site at that point, and maybe it was older online, I think. And he said, "Oh yeah, we'd like to do something with you." And he owned Bigger Magazine. I said, "I have nothing to do with that. I don't want. I'm not a porker. I don't want to be a porker. I don't want to advertise myself as a porker." So he said, "I'll do a new magazine just for you," and he called it Older. And that was the first edition of Older magazine. He did two or three others, but he waited like a year, so the magazine was on the stands for about a year. That was the story. He was very nice. I was surprised at how moral he was. He kept his word about everything. It was all a kind of gentleman's agreement. It was all done here locally. And he eventually went on to go to college, and he left all that. He used the money. He made good money, but he used it to put himself through college and stop doing porn. I wouldn't take money. I took magazines for it, and I still have a bunch of magazines. And then it went on Older online for a while. It was free, and then they dropped it, and it's someone told me it's on YouTube somewhere. He gave me a blowjob to prove producer, the owner, yes. And if you look at the magazine, there's a picture of him in the inside of the cover. No, no. He didn't make hundreds of pictures. He probably did three times as many as you see there. It didn't take that long. I never got any other offers. I never got any other offers to do anything like that. Well, he thought I should use a phony name, and I chose my grandfather's name. His name was John Gormanley, and so that's what I did. Yeah, well, yeah. At that point, I must have been on Silver Daddies, and I got a lot of email on Silver Daddies. Most of it, I made only one friend and all that. I wasn't interested in the 149 who contacted me. I was not interested in. One of them I met, and he's still a friend today. We were, lo- we were lovers for a year. Well, I really liked the portrait on the front. I mean, that's really why I did it. And he did an outstanding job. I did not like the photographs. He tried to exaggerate the fatness because that's what he was into, and he did a good job. And I'm not interested in that at all. But the cover I thought was worth the effort. The cover was really good, and so we're all on the same page there. That's why I did it, and I would do it again. But I don't know about the photographs. I don't at all. I really don't like them. I mean, they don't portray me. They don't look like me. I don't. If I were doing something, I wouldn't look like that, as you well as you well know. I mean, you can just see the way I act. I wouldn't act like that. I don't know. That was what he wanted. And that's what I gave him. And I think he did something to those photographs. I didn't have. I think I have a bigger pot than I have now, which is not likely. I don't know how he did that, but that's what he wanted because as I say, he was into. His magazine was bigger. He had a site called Bigger. It might still exist. Well, the magazine went on and on. But I think he gave up all that stuff in time. He sold it. But I know the site went on for a while. Called bigger.com. I don't know if it still exists. No, never come true. There is a site called boundguys.com that I like. And, um, um, I'm not into leather and uniforms and all that stuff. So, it's not something I pursued. But the fantasy was always there. I even remember that as a kid. It had nothing to do with being heterosexual or gay. And I think it had to do with Catholicism and the anti-sex, and the only way you could have sex is to be raped. That was the fantasy. That if I was taken, well, I could have sex and not have to worry about it. That's what that whole thing is about for me. But it never happened. I've never, even though I've wanted to do something, nothing has ever happened because I don't do anything that's not consenting, and if another person isn't interested, I'm not going to do it. And so normally, most of my it's not a requirement. It's not a requirement of my sexuality. It's just a fantasy. That's how actually when I started. when I was online and I didn't have real sex, it kind of became a substitute for real sex. It's kind of played in there. Stick a gag in your mouth and it's like a cock in your, I mean, so there was, and then you could display that on camera and some people would like that. So that's how it got more to the front. Um, but I think just like it's like I like hairy guys, and that's become more and more evident to me. And that's again a fetish, which you're born with, I suppose, because I was never not aware of that when I was younger. And, I was more aware that I would like to be raped. Well, see, you have to understand that that's not a gay fantasy. It's a sexual fantasy. It had nothing to do with my sexual orientation, so it was always there. I was a kid, I fantasized about it because I'm sure it had something to do with the Catholic denial of sex. And then I suppose it also has to do with consent, with it. You have to. No, I guess that's not really relevant. It's more the idea of being, we would say a bottom, but I'm not. I'm versatile, and I could do bondages, do someone as well as be done. So a fantasy's, just a fantasy, and I'm not a top or bottom, so I don't understand that at all. If you've been heterosexual and you've had to have sex with a woman for 7 years, you have to do everything. And the idea of being a top or bottom is just ridiculous. It seems so to me today, and I just, I guess one of the things I don't like about these sites is the people giving all their negative crap. I don't like this. I don't like that. Come on. If you just want to have sex with yourself, just masturbate. Don't put all this shit on me about I have to do this and I have to do that and I don't want this and I don't want that. That's not the way people socialize or have sex. Sex is about an interaction. And that's what pisses me most about these sites is, although I have to say there's not very much of that, but when I run into it, it irritates me. On the whole, I have to say that gay men on gay sites are really very, very well behaved, I'd say, in general. People are shocked at what other people want, but that's just too bad. I mean, it really gets me when people complain about a gay sex site on they're gay. What is this about? It's the only thing we have in the world for us, and you're pissing on it? What's wrong with you? You don't deserve to have sex, and they don't. They're complaining about, oh, nobody wants you. Yeah, nobody wants you because you don't want anybody. I mean, you have a negative attitude. Although I must say, I don't run into it very often, but when I do, I'm saying, well, how the hell do you expect to have a social relationship with somebody when you're just going to sit around and complain about everything? But on the whole, it's not that common. I think it's more common in heterosexual scene. I would say that women are were far more demanding than gay men. Men are more cooperative in sex than women are because women can get pregnant and they're just all, oh my God, it's all drama, drama, drama. And we say, I don't want any drama. Well, that's because we're gay and we don't have to have drama, so we can opt out of that. Women never drop out of it, never drop out of it. Or most don't. No. Mm-mm. I had a relationship with a guy that he wanted me to do anal sex, and Jesus, that's 10 years ago. And when I could no longer get hard enough, we stopped. That was the end of that. See, that's the gay thing. Why couldn't you do something else? But that was the end of that, and it wasn't the end of the relationship because we're still very close friends. But that's what he wanted. He wanted to be fucked, and I couldn't do it anymore. So that was the end of that. It's not that I can't get hard and come. It's that. I can't get hard enough to fuck somebody. So that is a real, what do you call it? Limitation in the gay world where everybody that's a bottom I can't deal with. Whereas if they're versatile, I could. You know, anything can happen. You can have footage. You can do all kinds of things. But no, your gay imagination. Well, I guess it's something that's kind of peculiar about gays is this narrowing of what they're demanding, what they want, and it's very limited. And it gets seems. I mean, there's some guys on. They list the whole things that they want and list what they don't want. It's a wonder anybody ever contacts them at all. But then you look at Silver Days. There's 250,000 guys. You got a lot to choose from. If you go on at night and you're looking down the list will never run out. You won't get through 1,000 people before you have to do something else. So that's probably why people are so demanding. But some people say they're picky. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. From what I don't know. I'm a very choosy type of guy. I mean, I don't have. First of all, if I'm answering an ad, they want to have oral sex. Okay, I know that's safe, so I'm likely to answer that kind of ad than I am someone who says they want to fuck me or I fuck them. If I can't fuck them, so that's out. So as far as fucking me, well, I want to know more about that, so I usually don't. And I always say sex, if you're going to have anal sex, it has to be with a condom. So, um, I don't know what the thinking of other guys is. All I can say is I haven't had any venereal disease since I've retired, and I have sex about at least once a month. So I must be doing something right, right? But basically, the principle is never have anal sex without a condom. And number two, oral sex is okay. But then, yeah, you have to realize that before I see, if I answer an ad, I've got to be sure that this guy sounds like he's not. No, I won't do anything with drugs, anything with alcohol, anything with. I have to have this now. You might say I'm very picky, but then there's a lot to choose from. So we don't need to take risks. So that's my answer is I am very selective. So I don't tend to, the sample that I choose is a very responsible sample as far as I know. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's this whole myth of if you're promiscuous, you are going to get venereal disease. Well, I haven't had it in 16 years, so I guess the myth is wrong. But then I also say the people I've had sex with don't have it either because I haven't gotten it. So I think all I can think is that the principle of oral sex is pretty safe. And again, choosing partners that they're not PB, all these drugs and stuff. And they're reasonable, I don't know about promiscuity. I just don't know how promiscuous people are, but I can tell that they at least have common sense from their ads. I wouldn't answer one that wasn't rational in some way, whatever that means. But these guys that say, "Oh, I don't like liars," and stuff. Come on, are you going to tell me that anybody would say, "Oh, lying is okay"? I mean, that's just a stupid thing to say. Oh, I don't like liars and gamers, and of course I don't. And why would you say that? I'm never going to answer an ad where someone seems like they're phony and lying, and you know. So I don't get that. Why would you say that? Of course, I want someone who's truthful. Yeah, and do you know anybody who doesn't want someone who's truthful? I mean, it's just, where's common sense? I would never, when someone says that, I ignore that ad. I want someone who's truthful and honest and sincere. Oh, you mean there are people who don't want people who want people who are insincere? That's crazy. So why do you say that? In terms of having your own shit detector, whether someone's a phony or a liar or a cheat, I can tell it by looking at their face. I don't need them to say anything. So, but then maybe that's just me. Just my opinion. Oh, you're so your generation is so lucky to have this. It means everything. I've met some great friends on the internet. The real friends that I made have all been, two or three have been on internet, and I would never have met them if it hadn't been for internet. So internet is the best thing that has ever happened to us if we know how to use it. And people have all kinds of complaints about it, but it's like a telephone. A telephone's a telephone. You have to use it in a responsible way. I mean, you have to use it. It's just a tool, but it's a tool that is the greatest force for democracy since the beginning of politics in modern politics. And you can see Al Qaeda's using it real well. If we want to stop Al Qaeda, why in the fuck aren't we stopping their internet? It's easy. That's what we should be doing, is shutting down the fucking internet on Al Qaeda and ISIS. We can do that. I don't know why we're not doing that. Because it is the greatest force. I mean, they're using it really well. So uh, it is. And the great thing about the internet is corporate powers have not taken it over yet. They cannot control our free speech. They can't control. And so it's the greatest thing that's happened. I mean, a whole generation of young gay men can go out there and see what's out there. If they don't have common sense, they might get in trouble. But it's a way to learn. It's a way to see. I mean, like Sober Daddies is great. It's so user friendly. It gives you so much information about the person. And then you have the protection of saying, well, I don't want to meet this person. I talk to them or see on Skype, and I don't want to pursue this. I think it's just the greatest thing. It's a huge leap. We don't even know the implications. And I do believe that the future of politics in the world is, well, we've seen that in the Arab Spring, is uh, is going to be affected by internet more than any other force in the world, even force than government or anything else. One profound thing someone said on one of these interviews recently, was on probably Charlie Rose, is that we are no longer in a world of governments. We're in a world of global economy. And in a sense, we're in a world of internet. Internet is the politics of the world today. And it's being shaped by that. We don't know where it's going, but more and more in the future, it's going to. If it caused, what we call the Arab Spring, it can also. Yeah, I don't know in terms of gay politics what difference it's made. As I say, it pisses me off when I see these gay people whining on a gay site that, oh, you want to have sex. What the fuck? This is our connection. We have a right to ask that question. For you to be shocked that someone brings up the topic of sex on a gay sex site, what the fuck is the matter with you? I mean, that's what it's about. It frees us to make the connections that we want to make. And I think it's wonderful in that regard. What we want to do with it is another thing. And I think gays, well, it's a totally different topic of what the future of gay stuff is. I think gay marriage, what the fuck? Why are we doing a heterosexual thing? I think it's fine if that's what you want to do. but it doesn't free us. It doesn't make us any better to copy what heterosexuals do. We have to create our own standards, and we're not doing it. I don't see that happening very well. Of course, in a way, it happens through action. I mean, when you look at Silver Daddies over time, you just see, fuck, I'm always amazed at the diversity. It's just endless. And that's what I'm learning, and that's what internet has to teach you. But then I, I just, when gays have to take responsibility for their own sexuality in the future, and that doesn't mean, oh God, we got to imitate heterosexuality. And I don't know. Well, that'll happen. I'm sure it'll happen because of the internet. We'll take more and more responsibilities for defining what we want and who we are. I mean, that's clear that we're doing that. But what gets me is all the people are so shocked. Oh my God, he wants to have sex with me? Oh my God. Or, oh, I want to be monogamous. That's a standard. It's not, it's a standard if you get pregnant, but why would you have that standard? Oh, and the whole idea of what people living together for a lifetime, why is that necessary? I'm not saying it isn't a good thing. I'm just saying we have to define what our own needs and limits are. Heterosexual marriage should not define, we should not be imitating the standards. We should be making our own standards. And that's a difficult thing. And I think that's an evolution that has yet to take place. First of all, just like with AIDS, we have to take responsibility for it. We did. Took 10 years. But then we're ignorant. And the same thing is going to happen with what is love? What is gay love? We're going to have to define that for ourselves. No one else can do that for ourselves. And we don't seem to want to do that. We're using all this mythology from heterosexual bullshit. It's just not relevant to us. And we're all on each other for being so promiscuous. Well, we're freed from pregnancy. We're freed from marriage. So I'm so free to do what? Well, we have to decide what that is. We have to define our own limits. No one's going to do that for us. And flipping back on heterosexual standards is just a total cop-out. So I have to say that what I have noticed in the gay people that I know, which is really a good thing, I run into men who'd say, I'd like to we have an open relationship and I'd like to have sex with you, but I would never leave my partner. And he knows it, and I love him with all my heart, and that's all that matters. Well, that's a standard that the world is not familiar with. But when someone says that, I have to admire their commitment. We have a different kind of standard of commitment. And I have a gay friend. I helped him get his PhD. He's 43 years old. We don't have sex. We had early on, but we don't have sex. He lives in Florida. And when I go back there and see him, people will say, oh, don't you have sex? I said, no. And they say, oh, you're lying. I mean, why can't I love somebody without having sex with them? Why can't he be my son? And you know what I realized about this guy is that I've never had a child. And all of a sudden, he's behaving like the best son you could ever want in the world. Calls me almost every day and treats me. We travel together and he treats me. So what is that? And when that happens, why would you put that down? We do. Oh, he's a sugar boy. No, he isn't. He's got his own life and his own job and his own money, and that's not the case. So how do we describe that? How do we categorize it? I can't. Except to say, if I ever had a son, it's like having that. I never knew that could happen to me. So why don't we need to take responsibility for claiming that as ours belongs to us. If we can form a relationship like that, And I feel very fortunate. I mean, this is 10 years old. And I've run into other people who've experienced that. And it doesn't fit into the heterosexual model at all. And it doesn't fit into a sexual model either. But in a sense, it does, because what it feels like is I have a son and he treats me. If I had a son, a good son, how would I want to be treated? I want to be treated the way he treats me. He's been treating me for 10 years. And, well, and I don't argue about it. I don't try to defend it. I mean, people always, oh, he's just a fucking, sugar boy. Well, I know that's not true. I know that's not true. We were in Europe once and I lost my wallet. I had no money. He paid for everything for the rest of the trip. Never any discussion. When are you going to pay me? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And when I went to, he had a graduation for part of his degree. It was a master's degree. And I went back there and he had some lover in New England and a lawyer. And they were very serious about each other. And this guy said, no, I don't want him coming back here. And his name is Fernando. And he said, well, he's going to come. If you don't like it, that's too bad. And he knew that there was no sex going on between us. But this guy says, no, you can't. I won't have him here. And they didn't live together. So that wasn't the issue of being in his house. That wasn't the issue. And Fernando said, well, then we're done. What is that? So what I don't like is I can't even talk about this very much because people want to put it down. They want to find something wrong with him, something wrong with me. Well, I know how I've had 10 years of experiencing this. I know what it is, and no one can, and people can have their opinions about it, but I know what it is. I know who he is, and I trust him, and he trusts me. And it's something that's happened over years, and I could tell you story after story after story of why that is true. But I don't have to defend it. But when we have something like that in our lives, I don't get any support from gays for this at all. All I get is, oh, he's using you. And it doesn't feel that way at all. And he often says, I really care for you. Well, he's not very verbal. He says, look at my deeds, look at my actions. And that's what I do. And you can't defend that with anybody. Okay, I have to tell the whole story of our entire relationship in order to convince you that he's a decent person. So and as I say, I've seen other relationships like this with gay men, and it's something we should take credit for. And there's been no gay literature, no stories. We have never claimed this. All we do is say, oh, there's sugar daddies and sugar, or someone will say, I'm not a sugar boy. But there's something else. There's something else. And he always pays his own way. He always pays his share, always. Uh, but I mean, what do I measure this against? I can only measure against the experience I've had with this person. And the other thing I can say is there's just no model to say what that is, what that is. But I mean, I would maybe like to write a play or something, uh, because how else can you tell it except by telling the stories? Um, so, and we don't even have a name for it. Again, I have to go back to heterosexual stuff and say, well, if I had a son, this is what I would want. He behaves like the best possible son that you could ever have. Yeah, but we don't have a vocabulary in our gay society for Although I have to say there are people who told the same story to me and said, I would never, ever, I would have sex with other people, but I would never betray my love, the love of my life. And well, I guess it comes to defining love because love is not sex. And if you see in heterosexuality, because children, and you live together because of the children and all that, the sex becomes so important. But and especially too in case of our age, well, I don't know, that's true with heterosexuals too, you know. Look, statistically, 80% of heterosexuals get divorced over a lifetime. And the 20% who don't get divorced, 80% of those have sex with other people. So what is monogamy? And monogamy is a fantasy that we put forward because we have children. That's what monogamy is. It doesn't exist in reality. It never has. And I don't know why gays can, do this sort of thing, trying to say it has to be monogamous. Uh, and I have nothing against those who want to do that. But we have other options. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem of distraction. We live in a world that's much more distracted and much more stressful. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think human nature wants to de-stress, and if you have common sense, you find space. I was just looking last night at a program called Looking about gay culture. The guy went away for a weekend to get away from it all, and he felt the need to clear his both his physical space, and we have a real problem with that. Yeah, I mean, Fernando has a smartphone, and he's always on his smartphone, and he's an extrovert, so he's always doing things. I, on the other hand, doesn't I'm never bored. I can entertain myself. I read TV. I have lesser stressful stuff. I have more control of my time. I don't want to get an iPhone so that I can be interrupted all the time. And sometimes I don't answer the phone. A lot of times I don't answer the internet. So I think human nature hasn't changed. The stress has, and we have to all learn how to deal with the stress of modern media. Um, you know that health has gotten worse, that diabetes is so on the increase of the younger generation because they don't move. I go to the gym every other day. I walk every other day. I do something every day to exercise. It still doesn't seem to be enough. Obviously, I should be this 260 pounds. But yeah, your generation is doing far. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I'd get out of school and I'd go out and play in the street for 2 hours, maybe 3 or 4 hours. I'd go home and have dinner and then play some more. I'd be moving all the time. And I remember in grammar school, having recess where we did stuff all the time, and we actually had PE class too. We walked to school. So, yes, I think your generation is in danger of not moving. I mean, it's a real temptation just to sit and do all the options that you have mechanically. And I think it's showing up in our health problems. Diabetes is like what? Doubled, tripled. In America, it's just terrible. And it's all because people are doing nothing but iPhoning all the time instead of doing something with their time, because they're used to answering their phones instead of going out and playing. I'm talking about children. And the same with adolescents and adults. I mean, um, Fernando's addicted to the gym, so we always go to the gym. He goes to the gym every day. So do I. I exercise every day. So he's not going to become a couch potato. But I think it's a real danger. And the poor kids, I feel sorry for them because they're not aware that this is happening to them. I think when I was a kid, how there was no, I mean, I had all my time to myself to do something, and I wanted to do something. And your generation grows up with, oh no, there's something to do all the time, and someone's calling you. There's a game to play, gaming or whatever. And so the idea of having your own life, I don't think it has to be that way again because human nature wants to have a life, and so people resist that. Uh, and there will be movements in your generation to say, yeah, get off the phone, have some free time. Don't you have that need yourself? So just turning it all off. But do you? Do you? Oh, okay. So human nature is not going to change, but we do have. It requires a different response, and certainly medicine is aware of the problem, but I don't know that individuals are. I've often wondered whether I should have been more of an artist, but I was never successful as an artist. So I was successful as a teacher, and generally, when I look back, I say no, I couldn't. Never. I had the best possible. I have to say that I chose. I People said you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't go to the seminary, you're too stupid. And I said you're wrong, and I went. And it cost me. I had to go back a year. I said you can't do that. And I said yes, I can. I'll do whatever I want to do. And I did, and I succeeded. And eventually, I chose to leave. But as far as getting in there and going the path that I wanted to go, I wouldn't take no for an answer. And the same was true for graduate school. When I went to graduate school, I was on probation all the time I was there because I got a C and B is passing, and I never got an A to make it up. So and I'm dyslexic, so I had some writing problems. And yet, when I was finished 2 years later, they said, we're still talking about your oral exams, your thesis. And so it never entered my mind that I would fail. And that's why I have no regrets about my life. I never imagined that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And so therefore I did whatever I wanted to do. I used to say to my students, only 50% of people ever go to college. Does that mean the other 50% are stupid, dumb, and can't do it? No, it means they don't want to do it. They don't want to make the effort. I just have average intelligence, and yet I achieved a very fulfilling life. And it's because whatever dream I had, I believed that I could. I never listened to what other people said about it. I just said, I want this, and I will do whatever it takes. And that's the other thing is, what will you do? Oh, I'll do this, I'll do that. No, you've got to do whatever it takes. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes. And if you are, you will get everything you want in life. That's what I've learned about life. The other thing is when you get what you want something more. You want something different. You want something more. Not necessarily opposite, but just when one door is open and you get there, then other doors open. So there's no end to your desires. But as far as achieving your desires, it's all dependent on, and I say you should never think about what other people think because it doesn't matter what other people think because they only think for a minute about you. You have to live with yourself 24 hours a day, and the only thing that matters is what you think. That's all that there is. And that's the secret to my own success and happiness has been that I never worried about what other people think, number one. Number two, I pursued the goal that I wanted, thinking I could get what I wanted. And the answer is I did. I've gotten everything I wanted. Well, I'm on Sober Daddies. They can find me there. Um, Because I like younger guys, it's a problem because, I feel bad about the fact that so many older guys come on to me and they want to pursue friendship. And well, number one is they live God knows where. So it's not really, none of this stuff is very feasible. So I just ignore them. So generally, I ignore things. I go after what is of interest to me, and there's plenty out there. But the other thing is, of course, the ones that I'm interested in aren't interested in me. I think that's the great gay dilemma, is if you're interested in somebody, they're not interested in you. And the wrong thing, I guess the thing that pisses me off about gay media, or just, what do you call social internet interaction, is someone says, I love you. How can you possibly love me? You don't know anything about me. And it just, come on, give yourself a break. You don't know anything about me. I'm not going to take that seriously. But then they think they come from a superior position because they say, I'm in love. With what? With looks? You don't know anything about me. So um, the whole idea, one of the things I say in my promo is, I accept sex as an introduction to getting to know somebody. And all these people, oh no, unless it's a long-term relationship. If you want to know me, you've got to do something to know me. So, well, the other thing that's just totally crazy is people from all over the world. I'm in love with you. I want to be with you. I mean, come on, give me a break. Of course, they're always from countries that I'd want to get out of. Isn't that it? You ever notice that? I want a long-term relationship. I want to get out of Israel. I want to get out of Lebanon. I want to get out of Malaysia. I want to get out of Tennessee. You know, so I don't take that very seriously, but I kind of feel sorry for those people. So my advice is, gee, I don't know. Never tell somebody you're in love with them unless you know them, and that takes time. So don't put on your profile. I guess the thing that I admire is, uh, people who say, "Well, I want to be friends. I want to know. I'd like to make. Uh, I'd like. I don't mind someone saying, I want a long-term relationship. Who doesn't? Who doesn't want to be in love? But how do you do that? You don't do that by saying, "Oh, I'm in love. I see you on the TV. I'm in love." It's just so crazy. But that happens an awful lot, and I guess that dealing with that, I just try to ignore it because what can you do with that? So I certainly have enough people that I've contacted that I'm interested in. I have some friends. I am not desperately seeking Susan, and I don't think anybody who is in trouble. People who are desperately want a relationship, who say I'm not complete without somebody else. Well, the truth is, I have people in my life, and there's something to that. If you're not connected to somebody, some people, then your life is indeed empty. You need that. But the idea of saying there has to be somebody I live with and who loves me, and I don't know. I just, that's a terrible thing to say, that you're not sufficient for yourself, that you can't take care of yourself, that you can't be independent. If you are, then I think things will happen for you. Um, I mean, I guess I could give my number on Silver Daddies if people want to contact me. I don't mind because I will ignore most of them. Now look at the figure. Look, 150 people. I'm just guessing on the magazine. There was only one of them I wanted to know, and I knew that all along. It wasn't like that was a no-brainer, or oh, I better go check all these people out. And I guess that's the other thing. Trust your intuition on what you feel, on what you know right away. You know right away whether you're just pushing for something that isn't right for you, or whether there is some mutual. So for me, mutual consent is everything. I never push relationships that don't want me. I just don't. Because if there isn't some kind of, someone said this is a principle, relationships work because they work. They don't work because you work at them. If you have to work at it, it's not, it's not healthy. It's something that has to be mutually desired. I have no idea why Fernando connects with me. Ultimately, I don't agonize about it, but I know he does. There's something he really is connected to, and the same for me. And there's a lot of things we don't have in common, and I don't mull over that. I just, well, I do. Of course, I say, what? And it's possible that I would, I'd like a lover, of course. But, I mean, come on, it has to be based on something that's truly mutual. And I guess being honest with yourself is something you have to cultivate if you're honest. What does Shakespeare say? Above all things, to thine own self be true, and this follows as night the day. If you are true to yourself, you can't be false to anybody else. The standard is, am I honest with myself? And yeah, you have lots of doubts and confusions, but in the end, you have to be honest with yourself. The only thing you have is the truth that you have. That's all you have. So you could give my number. I don't know what it is. I haven't memorized it for sober daddies if anybody wants to talk. But I'm not big on, huge talking unless I'm interested in meeting somebody. You know what I mean? Uh, the idea of just talking to somebody on internet and going on and on. Of course, let me see. Does that happen? No, it doesn't happen very often. It happens sometimes. But uh, yeah, and there are guys that I've invited to talk to me, and I'm not saying it has to be sexual. They never respond. Isn't that interesting? It's happened very often, but I'm not going to agonize over that. I make an offer. I say, say I'm interested in somebody, and then he doesn't seem interested in me, and then I will say, well, if you just want to talk, here's my number. No one ever calls. Isn't that interesting? Because this whole idea of I just want to talk, which I'm good at, as you can see, uh, it doesn't mean much. We're always pursuing. Uh, I guess one of the things I find odd about internet is that there aren't more talking, in the sense that um, there's 250,000 men on Silver Daddies, and I rarely have a conversation with anybody. I do, but it's so extremely rare that you would say, well, I just want to know something about this person before putting aside whether I'm interested in sex or not, because I haven't really met the person. They don't even want to go there. I find that very odd. That's something that troubles me about internet, is the fact that people who find any attraction at all would not want to talk to each other. And that's my experience. They don't. And that is troubling. I mean, it baffles me. 250,000 men and no one wants to talk to me? It's to your credit that you pursued this in this way. How often do you think that happens? When was the last time you think I talked with somebody for an hour on Skype? The answer is never, 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 never. Now there's something wrong with that, because the odds are that what we're doing right here is, should be a fairly common human. Why not? And the answer is it never happens. Almost never. And when I think about it, I met Fernando this way. And of course, he came out 10 Christmases ago. And I can't remember our dialogue on TV, on Skype. And he came here, and it wasn't till much later I said, "Well, what if you didn't like me?" He said, "I would have gotten up and gone home. I would not have stayed the week. I would not have stayed an hour. I would not have stayed." And then I think, and one thing he said to me, he said, "If you had asked me the size of my dick, I would not have. That would have been it." I said, "Well, I'm sure glad I didn't, but I mean, that's kind of, so what? Why would that be a deal breaker?" And that's what bothers me about gay men in general, is these deal breakers are all over the place. And they're preventing themselves from any kind of interaction, any kind of meaningful conversation. I mean, do you find that true? I mean, what's your response to that? Huh? No, I mean, do you find, is your experience different in terms of people willing to talk to you on Skype very often for a long time? It's rare, isn't it? And it's, see, I just find that inhuman. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with that, because if I meet somebody and I volunteer in a thrift store, someone comes in, we start a conversation, it can go on for a half hour. That's what's normal, whether anything goes anywhere or not. I don't understand that on the internet people are just so, again, in a hurry to move on and never. And I asked about myself too. I wonder how many of these guys I'm looking at might be the best friend in the world, but I never give them a chance. They don't have a chance. Okay, be happy. Get out there and pursue your dreams. And other people, uh, it, I have a lot of alcoholism in my family. And I have one relative that's not an alcoholic, and she's a teacher and functional person. And I said to her, why is it that we're not alcoholics? And the answer is, we have a life. And that's my advice to people. Choose a life. If you're sitting around complaining and bitching and I don't have that, poor me, that's because you haven't chosen something. Take control of your life. Get a life. That's the answer. Not drugs, not compulsion and food and sex, but get a life. And what does that mean? It means following your passions. And that's the advice I give to people. I've been happy because I have followed my dreams. That's the answer to unhappiness and incompleteness and frustration. Follow your dreams. That's all you have. And your dream is everything. If you have a dream, then you shape your life. Other people shouldn't be making your dreams for you. Or the worst thing you can do is say, "I'm not worthy of my dreams. I can't have that." That's death. And of course, well, that's why people become alcoholics. They're self-medicating, drugs and everything else. We all have our compulsions and our, I guess, what you would call addictions. But the solution to that, to me, is get a life, pursue your dreams, have a dream. Number one is have a dream, and believe that you're worthy of your dreams. That's what I wish for all of you.